Redistricting in Indiana takes a big step forward. Days after Senate Republicans said they didn't have the vote, Governor Mike Braun is calling a special session. The details of his proclamation and what comes next in this Crossroads Politics special report. Hi everybody, Dustin Grove here. Welcome to this special edition of Crossroads Politics on WTHR+. We have breaking news today. Indiana Governor Mike Braun now calling a special session to look into redrawing Indiana's congressional districts. Just last Friday, Indiana Senate President Pro Tem Bray announced he did not have the votes to pass these new congressional maps. Braun has said for weeks he would not call a special session unless there is broad support for it. Despite reportedly not having the votes yet in the Senate, Braun is moving forward. Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith told me just a few days ago he believes there will be. We're going to hear from him in just a minute. So the session is set to start November 3rd. Let's head straight to the State House and our reporter Emily Longnecker, who is at the State House right now with what comes next. Emily?
Yeah, Dustin, it's the quiet before the storm here at the Indiana State House. The proclamation signed today by Governor Braun convenes the special session on Monday, November 3rd, but that doesn't mean that lawmakers will be here at that time. The shot clock starts for lawmakers on November 3rd. They'll have 30 session days or 40 calendar days, whichever is shorter, to get their business done. That's Indiana state law, so it isn't changing. So that's December 13th at the absolute latest. If they aren't done by then, they either have to give up or Governor Braun has to call another session. Indiana has two rules for congressional districts. They need to be equal in population, and they can't discriminate against voters based on race. In fact, the districts don't even have to be contiguous. You could put Terre Haute and Richmond in the same district without connecting them. We also don't know how the map will be drawn. Lawmakers could do it or bring in outside consultants. We also should note that this special session isn't just for redrawing the state's congressional districts. Governor Braun mentioned changes to federal law under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that lawmakers will be looking at to adjust the state's tax code. We are talking with a CPA to get a better understanding of those changes and what they mean for you. Dustin?
Emily, thank you. Governor Braun and Indiana lawmakers have been under a lot of pressure from the White House to get redistricting done. Vice President J.D. Vance was in Indy earlier this year making the case. Then Indiana lawmakers took a trip to Washington to meet with White House strategists. And then earlier this month, President Trump called lawmakers himself again to make the case. But it's still unclear if Republicans actually have the votes. When Nikki Kelly with the Indiana Capitol Chronicle reached out to a spokesperson for Senate Republicans this morning after the governor's announcement, they said they still did not have the votes. But on Friday, Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith said Braun should call the session anyway, saying Republicans need to fight fire with fire. Here's part of our conversation.
I think for years we've had this idea that if we're just nice, everyone else will be nice. And unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. I think Donald Trump, one of the greatest presidents in our lifetime, in my opinion, he's shown the Republican Party how to fight fire with fire.
When does it end? At what point does it end? If you're saying, okay, we'll do this now mid-cycle, well, who's to say then under a Democratic administration we flip the script and in another 2 to 4 years we're here all over again?
What this will do, and what I hope it does, it forces the Supreme Court to make rules that everybody plays by across the board. So this is a good step because it's going to force the Supreme Court to get involved. Absolutely. I think that's a good thing. I would be against redistricting if I could trust our states, our fellow states like Illinois and California and New York to all play by the same rules. The problem is they're not. And so it's going to take the Supreme Court to get involved. So for Indiana to do this right now, this is one more step to say, Supreme Court, we need you to tell us the rules that everybody plays by. And at that point, then the issue's solved.
Here now is more reaction from both sides.
After 3 months of conversations, the pressure's on from both sides. Senate Republicans have had at least one phone call with President Trump about redistricting, and Republican lawmakers and the governor have met with Vice President J.D. Vance on 2 separate visits to Indiana. On the other side of the issue, Democrats have voiced their opposition to redrawing the state's congressional districts at rallies. Recent polls have also shown a majority of Hoosiers don't support redrawing the map mid-cycle. UIndy political science professor Dr. Laura Merrifield Wilson spoke to all that lawmakers must consider as they make a decision on whether to support redistricting efforts.
You have the pressure coming from the party. And of course, as an elected official, as a public leader, they're also trying to make decisions that they think are best for their constituency and the state. And sometimes those are going to be different than what either the party or the constituency itself thinks.
Some of those constituents have spoken out via petitions. In the past month, voting rights advocates delivered a petition with close to 20,000 signatures from Hoosier voters against redistricting.
We've done what we can to try to keep this session from happening. The work is not over until these maps are passed. And while the Senate is still saying they don't want to do this, we're going to remain involved and encourage everybody to continue speaking up.
And with the word that the votes still aren't there amongst Senate Republicans, voting rights organizations continue to lobby senators. They tell me, some of these organizations, that they are going to actually be back here tomorrow, not with petitions this time, but they say with care packages for all 50 senators, in their words, to encourage them to keep going and standing up against redistricting. These care packages, they say, will have snacks and even Red Bull they said, in their words, to kind of refuel the senators and again keep them going in this stand that some still have against redistricting. Ann, Felicia?
All right, Emily Longnecker reporting for us from the State House tonight. Thank you.
And we've heard from many lawmakers on both sides of the aisle after the governor's announcement.
Senate Democratic Leader Shelley Yoder issuing a statement on behalf of the Indiana Senate Democratic Caucus. It says in part, quote, "Polling after polling, event after event, conversation after conversation, Hoosiers of all parties have made it clear they do not want this. The people said no, loudly, clearly, and repeatedly. It has taken months of backroom deals, arm twisting, and out-of-state threats against Hoosiers just to get this far." Other state Democrats are also reacting to this news of a special session tonight.
Many are pushing back on this idea of redistricting, saying Governor Braun and Republicans are trying to steal more seats ahead of the midterm elections. Indiana House Minority Leader Phil Giaquinta encouraged Hoosiers to continue to make their voices heard on this issue.
It's going to be best for these reps and senators to hear from folks that live in their districts, that know them and talk to them all the time on not just this issue, but all other issues that come before us during session. And so those voices are much more important than me or any of our fellow Democrats calling them. And that's why I encourage them to do so.
You can watch much more of our ongoing redistrict coverage right here on WTHR Plus and read the details of what happens next and how this fits into the larger national redistricting debate at WTHR.com/redistricting. We've also got a number of statements coming in both for and against this special session and this vote. We'll have the latest online as we get it. For now, for Emily Longnecker, I'm Dustin Grove. Thanks so much for watching.